sound.
I want to welcome everyone to National Storytellers Night. We have, we only have like 3 people in our audience today, which reminds me, go over to newridermedia.com and sign up for the free membership. This is the only way that you get to come into the meeting and get a chance to interact with our guests, and especially our guest today, who is going to be so much fun to talk to. Talk about too. So I also want to remind you, those of you, again, I'm assuming that most of you are going to look at this on the YouTube channel. Remember, like this video and subscribe. We're trying to build this group up as fast as we can and as much as we can. And you guys got to remember, this is kind of like a photo night on the web. But without further ado, let's get to our guest today. My guest today is Indianapolis freelance photographer. He's been around for he's had about 4 decades of experience photographing everything from sports to news and stuff like that. Please help me welcome to National Storytellers Night, Doug McSchooler. Welcome.
That's me. Thank you. Always fun to be here.
Yeah. And this is gonna be a little bit confusing because there's 2 Dougs on here, and it's like, hey, how's it going, Doug? How's it going, Doug?
Most cool episode you've ever had.
I know.
Well, it's the fun.
Yeah, 2 Dougs, and right. we found out that for those of you who are tuning into the recording, you gotta remember, hey, if you guys come in here, we have I usually do a little bit of networking before. Doug and I were talking about our affinity for Nikon cameras, and we both have old cameras that we keep on our shelves. But before we get to anything else, Doug, go ahead and share your screen so we can start showing them some photography.
Sure. Oopsie. There we go. Is it going? Best laid plans, right?
I know. Best laid plans.
All right.
It should be going now.
Cool. So I'll just start this slideshow. This is what I label as human interest stuff. So it's just things that aren't sports is basically I try to separate things out. So in going through and trying to produce something to show you for this event, it was saddening to me that so much of my work in the past 10 years has been sports. I started off almost exclusively doing news and community news type events. Fortunately, there's a newer publication in Indianapolis that is exclusively news, and I've been able to shoot a significant amount of their freelance for them. So that's kind of been a recent satisfying turn of events. There's my eclipse photo we were speaking of earlier.
Now, what is your favorite thing to cover?
An individual person that has a good story or a unique story or an interesting story. So anytime I get an opportunity to be in somebody's space or their life or to witness something that they do that either I've never experienced myself or I've never seen myself, I just think that's so cool. I just when you get somebody alone or when they're talking about something they're passionate about, even if it's nothing you ever thought you would ever be interested in, you don't even have to be interested in it, but to listen to somebody talk about what they're doing and then photograph them while they're experiencing their life, and especially something that they enjoy doing, that's my wheelhouse. I love to be around people that are like that and doing things, whether it's a even if it's a politically motivated or social cause kind of situation, doesn't always have to be, just somebody that knits really well or they paint pictures really well or anything to that degree. Just anybody that's passionate about what they do, I like to document that, and that's truly where I like to be. Like the pictures of the tornado there, or even protests. I enjoy that as well. In that there's always a story that's there that, as a photojournalist, you have to represent it as you see it, and as you can't shoot it in a way that misrepresents what's actually happening. So anytime that I have an opportunity to make those judgments as I'm shooting, I enjoy that as well, especially when it's on the fly.
So how did you get started in photojournalism?
When I was a junior in high school, I got a camera somehow given to me or available to me. And me and one of my buddies, there was a house fire that we could see from our neighborhood. So it's like we hopped on our bikes. For some reason, I grabbed that camera and we rode our bikes to this fire. And it was a big old house fire. And I took a couple of pictures, and there was a reporter there from a local newspaper and asked who I was. And they said, well, if you give me your film, I'll get it developed for you. And, maybe we'll use it, and we'll make sure to get your film back to you. And it's like, oh, that's cool. So I did it. And like the next day, there was this big picture on the front page of the local paper of that house fire, and it had my name underneath it. And I thought, that's cool. I like that. I want to do that again. So that kind of snowballed. The owner of that newspaper then started giving me things to do and shoot for them. And he was an amazing community style photojournalist. He was photographer of the year for a number of years back in the 80s, here in Indiana, in the Midwest region, I should say. So, I mean, I was fortunate that I learned from one of the best early on, and he instilled in me a lot of the ethics and certainly quality. I mean, he was in a dark room. He was a stickler for detail, which is something I think that I've been able to continue to parlay through digital work, and what I do, what you are limited to be able to do ethically in Photoshop and stuff. I enjoy, not towing the line certainly, but I like to make sure that I'm not doing anything that I'll regret someday. If somebody goes back and looks at my stuff after I win my Pulitzer and they, oh, wait, he's doctored his images. I don't want that to be a situation. So,
isn't that like kind of an interesting thing when that's really, sometimes photographers get that stigma that, hey, we doctor our photographs, and it's like, but most of the photographers, it's so far out of our ethics to do something like that when you hear that other people do it, it makes you mad. It makes you angry.
Exactly. And, I know a couple of photographers personally that they're no longer in the business because they got caught. And I didn't know that they were doing anything, but it's very disappointing when you find out that they just routinely do things comfortably, and it's not an issue for somebody. For me, I wish that Adobe would come out with a PJ version of Photoshop that has limited tools. It doesn't have a rubber stamp tool. It doesn't have all the really cool AI generated fill stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong.
That's scary. That's scary.
Amazing.
AI stuff is really scary because when you look at how easy it is to make up a photograph, and it hurts photojournalism because
Really, yeah.
for a a job where we're supposed to tell the truth and show the truth.
Right, exactly.
And now people can just make things up on an AI. That it scares me. It scares me as a photographer. And
it's fascinating that early on in digital photography, even it was scary then because there were too many photographers that were starting out that never shot film and never shot with a manual camera even, or
Hmm.
so they didn't even understand exposure, what I would say properly.
Hmm.
They would set their camera on auto and they could take pictures, and they could take 1,000 pictures of an event because it was bottomless digital,
Yeah.
however big of a memory card you have, that's how much you can shoot.
Yeah.
And not to, I certainly love my beginnings, but I had 36 pictures to take,
Mhm.
period.
And it's
That was it.
interesting that you don't sit on the shutter as fat as much
Three
when
frames.
you.
If it was a sporting event and there was a play developing in front of me, I would shoot 3 frames.
Mhm.
I knew that's why, because I had to stop because
Mhm.
I can't afford to shoot
Right. Yeah, I mean,
more.
because there's more. I mean, there's more to it. That, it's not just the film. It's
Right.
going back and developing the film and the time
Right.
that you're gonna have to go through looking through the film, and there's a lot
Hmm.
of stuff that goes to it, and you do it kind of almost edit yourself when you're shooting film.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's fascinating because one of the things I enjoyed, there was a period of time that in even my digital age, I was strobing a lot of high school gyms or that I would be in, or I'd shoot strobes at, in NBA games or something like that. And I actually enjoyed that because it was more like my experience in shooting film because you're shooting 1 frame a second at usually at the most.
Hmm.
I mean, recycle times obviously on modern strobes are much faster than they used to be, but back when you're shooting speedotrons, you had a frame a second. That's what you did. And
Hmm.
I think that my experience with film gave me leverage to be able to experience. I knew how to be patient and wait for the time for the right time to shoot something. We're talking about sports, and I'm sitting here showing new stuff, but
Well, but I mean, news has a lot to do with it too, though.
oh yeah,
You're
timing.
not you're looking for the decisive moment instead of like rolling the how many photographs you can get and hoping that you're going to get that decisive moment. While we're at it, though, what do you look for in a moment?
Um, I'm not sure how to put this into words because I'm a photo person. Um, Emotion is really probably the first thing that when somebody, I want it to have stopping power. So when somebody looks at it, if they're looking at a bunch of stuff, I want them to stop at one of my photos for a reason, not just because it's a pretty photo, but because it's like has a message that they want to finish reading. So there was something that stops them, and then they need to study it just a little bit longer just to see the entire story of what that photo is of. So knowing that I talk about layering, it's not just the visual layering, which is something that's nice to do from a composition standpoint, but the layering of stories and this, like people dancing, well, they're clearly special needs, and I like to be able to put in different components of the overall story. But having said that, cropping is important to get rid of extraneous things that aren't part of the story. I think that's one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine with when I see some photographers that it's great that you can shoot full frame photo. You don't have to crop it because it's such a nice photo without cropping it. But if you did crop it and you got rid of this stuff over here, it's the equivalent of a writer eliminating part of their story that has nothing to do with the actual story. So if you were writing a story about this guy riding a bicycle, well, there's a telephone pole. Oh, this guy's riding a bicycle and he's in front of a house that's dilapidated with a telephone pole. Well, the telephone pole doesn't have anything to do with the story.
Hmm.
It's nice to eliminate the telephone pole. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that. But if it's croppable, where you could eliminate extraneous topics from your photo, that's important for me. So I'm I don't know if I'm quick to crop, but I'm conscious of, when I crop things out, I try to eliminate as much as I can that's not important to the storyline of the photo. So so when it comes to what I'm looking for in a good photo, it's something that's concise and emotional and it has stopping power. So
And I'm sure, like, talking about cropping, you're looking to crop I mean, especially coming from the world of film, you see someone riding a bike across this dilapidated house that you
Hmm.
might go like, okay, well, I know that this stuff isn't going to be relevant. So with my film camera that I only have maybe one photograph, I'm going to look for that photograph more and look for that layering.
In that
Uh,
picture, by the way, of the guy riding the bicycle, that was up in Gary, Indiana. It's a an assignment I shot for. I don't remember who I shot it for. Huffington Post, maybe somebody like that. And I was sitting in my vehicle, I was looking around trying to figure out where else I needed to be going, and I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw this guy riding up on a bicycle. I put my window down real quick and I shot probably a frame, maybe two, of him riding by, and that. I did it kind of coyly because Gary, Indiana is known for its um, bad neighborhoods, and I was in one of those neighborhoods shooting the story I was shooting. Oddly enough, as I was leaving town, I was done. I was wrapped up. I wasn't shooting anymore. I was on my way out of town, and I thought, oh, I'm going to stop at this convenience store over here, grab something to drink before I get on the interstate. That guy, this was like an hour later after I shot that photo. That guy on that bicycle comes riding across the intersection and goes to the convenience store. So when I went in there and I introduced myself to him, told him, I took my camera, showed him the picture I took. I said, I took this picture of you earlier today. And he was so cool. He gave me his name. I found out about him. He was a DJ, and he was, he's flamboyant. I mean, he was thrilled with it. And it was one of those things. It's like, oh, I was so glad that I got brave and introduced myself to somebody because there was no reason not to. I mean,
what's
you
the worst
know,
is he going to say? No.
right. And
Yeah. I
if
mean,
you, I'm not saying I usually will respect somebody's request that don't take my picture unless they're hey, if you didn't want your picture taken, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, kind of situation.
exactly. Uh-huh.
You
Uh,
know,
that's
I
especially with news. If you're
sorry
not,
for you.
yeah.
It's a situation. If she didn't want her picture taken, you shouldn't be holding that sign standing on a street corner.
Hmm.
You need to be someplace else.
Hmm.
You've put yourself into a situation that you need to expect to be seen, and
Well, you're in public, you're doing something that's interesting, whether
right.
it's a protest or whatnot, you're doing something interesting. I mean, yeah, you're gonna get your picture taken.
I
Uh,
only have one story that pops into my mind where I had somebody that blew up at me as I was taking a photo of their kid. I was covering a parade in a town nearby, and this little kid had like one of the little pinwheels you blow on it, and it spins, and he was just going crazy doing it, and there were clowns and stuff all around. It just was a cool photo, so I shot it. The parent came up to me as if I was a criminal. I mean,
mhm,
they created a scene because I took a photograph of their kid. It was kind of like I didn't understand it.
mhm,
I have kids and I do protect my kids, but also it's like it. I didn't understand why they were so upset,
mhm,
and I apologized. Didn't delete the photo.
mhm.
I
But
mean,
then, you didn't turn around and run it though, too though.
no, I don't remember if that one actually made it. I don't
Yeah.
remember what I did with it.
Mhm.
I clearly don't want to upset people, but at the same
Right.
time,
They're out in public. I mean, you kind of again, you have that,
yeah,
that you kind of have to kind of expect that someone's going to take a picture, especially you're going to do something kind of cute.
yeah, right.
What's one
It
of
was
the
like,
CYA pictures?
I remember
Get a
showing them,
picture.
saying, "Well, this is all it is. It's just a
Mhm.
picture of them." And they say,
Well,
"Well, you should ask permission to take photos like that." It's like, well, it was a kind of a spontaneous thing. I didn't want to. If I would have asked permission, it would have been over. It
the
wouldn't have
moment
happened.
would have been gone. The
And I
moment would have
can't.
been totally gone.
Don't stage. I don't
Mhm.
not going to ask them to do it again for me.
Right.
I certainly never do that. So,
No. Uh-uh.
it's just um yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. But that hasn't happened to me that many times. There have been times I've been taking pictures of people in situations that I almost expected them to ask me not to take their picture.
Mhm.
Um, and they don't, and they've not, and they've been almost flattered that I have taken their photo because I 99% of the time I always go up and after I get a photo, introduce myself and get their name and find out about them and get their backstory, and so that a way I have a caption to write.
Mhm.
So
What do you when you're out on assignment, you know,
mhm.
first of all, who do you generally work for when you're out? You know, being a freelance photographer, you're not like working for a particular newspaper. You have clients. Who are some of your clients?
Anybody's gonna pay me. So, within reason. Um, it's interesting. I guess I'm fortunate that I don't advertise myself. When I get a phone call from somebody asking if I'm available to shoot, they got my name from somebody else, or they've seen my name on something else, or um, my name is a unique name, in that I'm kind of fortunate that way that it's kind of sticks with people. So a lot of my work with Associated Press has spun, somebody's seen something from that and they've contacted me. And then also with Indianapolis Star, I've been freelancing for them for decades at this point, and they get a lot of phone calls and then they pass people on to me. So I'm fortunate in that I've got people that are willing to pass work on to my direction and help me out that way. So keeps me busy, which is good.
Yeah, I can see that.
Don't have
Uh,
don't didn't have a day off, so
so
why would you want a day off though from taking photos? What psycho would be like that, right?
right.
Can't imagine.
And you know, and I'm sure you're one of this, you know, like the rest of us, have the camera with you at all times. So, you know, again, when the kids,
Literally bought a carry. I just bought myself a new camera that is I call it my grandpa camera, but it's literally I say literally with me all the time, and it's not right here, but it's a Nikon ZF. It looks like my old Nikon FM, so it's kind of got that retro feel to it, and it's got a 40 millimeter f2 lens on it, which so here's why that camera has been so much fun for me. It has a black and white setting, so I've literally shot it on black and white almost exclusively. um, I don't have any prime lenses around that 40 millimeter range anymore. I had a 50 decades ago,
Mhm.
but most of my lenses now are 14 to 24, 24 to 70, 70 to 200, and that's and I've noticed that I'm never in that 50 millimeter range at all. So having this
Mhm.
40 millimeter has been cool. I mean, it's just so because I have to take a step back and I don't have my 14 millimeter just crammed right in there and hardly ever look through my camera. I mean, I'm usually, when I have my 14 on, I'm just like holding it out and
Mhm.
long enough. I know what I'm pointing the camera at, and I don't need to be looking through it
Mhm.
to get a picture. But with the 40 millimeter, I have to. It's like because um, I've just not used that focal length. So the thing that's been doing for me is I'm having to think about composition every frame I take. I've got it set to single frame, so I'm not just blasting through a bunch of pictures. Um, and like I said, it's black. I'm set it on black and white because I'm trying to teach myself, or not teach myself, remind myself of the subject that I'm shooting, and the story that is, not what the color is or what makes. Sometimes a lot of photos are fascinating and amazing because they're colorful. They may have zero information in them from a photojournalism standpoint, but it's a real pretty
Mhm.
picture. And I think it needs to be the opposite. I think besides being a pretty picture and real colorful, it has to have some information in it first to be photojournalism. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm probably flipping through half a dozen photos in this slideshow that keeps going around and around and around. Just pretty pictures. The
Mhm.
dragonfly, for example, it's just a pretty picture. I mean, it's not like it's a storytelling photo at all. So I have a lot of photos that are like that, and I will continue having photos like that. I hope, because I think there's a time that you can meld those two together and make it an even better photo than just the storytelling photo. It's not just a storytelling photo, but it is a striking photo from just a picture of the world standpoint. So
Well, let's in fact while we have some of these pictures up, let's talk about some of them.
sure.
Like like let's let's talk about this one. Uh
So
like,
I'm going to escape this and we will do it this way. How's that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that
Well,
was
you know what? Before you go to that one,
uh-huh.
just like let's talk about some of your stories. Where are some of your out of these? What are some of your favorite photographs?
Um, and
I know
why do
it's like asking who's your favorite child, but
people ask that question? It's a great question. You were talking about Aerosmith earlier.
uh-huh.
Uh, it's fascinating. I've shot Kiss a number of times now in my career. They're like marketing geniuses because they know photographers are going to be there for 3 songs, and they will, as a group, except for the drummer, will all come and pose in front of the photographers, not looking at the photographers, but they just go like come together and they'll pose for a minute and they back up and they go in front of other photographers and they pose again. They're masterful. They give you photos, which
Hmm.
is that's kind. Thank you. It's like
Right.
the easiest thing in the world to shoot. Um, I like cultural things like this too, that I'm not necessarily, I like being thrown in out of my comfort zone. So when I'm put in front of a culture that I'm not necessarily familiar with. I've heard of Day of the Dead celebrations and things like that. But in this case, it's like I just enjoy being around people that aren't like me. And well, in more ways than one, but who wants to be around people like me? But that's one of the things that fascinates me about photojournalism people. You get to meet, various people that are like that. Um, so this is chronologically that we're going through these now at this point.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, in the 2020s, it was the period of protest. Although this isn't 2020, I don't know what year this is. Um, favorite photos. I don't know. That's a hard one. That really is a hard one. This was an emotional time. This was one of the Black Lives Matters protests, and the the group of Black Lives Matters protesters were marching from downtown Indianapolis to the mayor's mansion, which is 10 blocks away, maybe. I don't know. And staged outside the mayor's residence were the state police and Indianapolis Police Department. There was an army basically and riot gear. So there was a potential for a clash. And I don't have the entire story of photos in here. Well, I do have this. Um, the police officers started taking off all their riot gear and they started embracing the protesters. And the whole, well, this was the guy in the hoodie was like the spokesperson for the mob, the group, all
Hmm.
the people. And this is them negotiating, how they're going to resolve this so that nothing happens. They got their message out. No, no, the police didn't have to do anything to do what police do, I guess. Um, and it was almost emotional. It was really kind of cool. I have photos of the police officers taking their gear off in this yard in these people's neighborhood where they'd set up basically a fire line of to stop the protesters, and it was kind of a cool moment. So anytime I get to witness anything like that is cool stuff. So that's downtown Indianapolis. We have a monument circle. um, it's a war memorial is what it really is. And so it's like all the wars. One of the protests ended up there. We had a number of anti-mask people rallies that happened around our state house. So these were shot for, a lot of the stuff was shot for the Indianapolis Star, USA Today, their network. Um, I don't know. I don't remember if I shot much of the protest stuff for Associated Press or not, but at the time, um, those were those were my people.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I will, as a journalist, sometimes I can't ask. I ask all kinds of questions of people as a journalist, but one of the things I can't go and ask things that I think are politically motivated questions necessarily, and I have all kinds of politically motivated questions for these people that I wanted to ask so badly, but I didn't think it was appropriate for me to remain neutral and ask the question I wanted to ask. And my question would be, how do you know who to shoot
Mhm.
when you're out in public like that and you've got those guns? So this guy over there starts shooting at somebody over there. How do you know who the bad guy is of those two?
Mhm.
So how do you know who to shoot? I've always wondered how in this situation. It just seemed odd to me. So I wanted to ask him so badly. They were very I'm not sure who they were actually providing security for at this point.
Do you feel like it's a deep-seated feeling that prevents you from doing something that's unethical like that? You want to ask that political question, but you know that you have to stay neutral.
Um, yeah, I it's shocking to me every now and then I'll run across some a photojournalist or photographer in general that is doing something you're just really not supposed to be doing as somebody documenting anything, whether it's a sporting event or a news event or anything. Sporting events bugs me when I see a photographer that's shooting for a publication cheering for one team or the other.
Mhm.
We can't cheer. We're not that we can't do that. That's not we're not there to cheer for this team or that team. We're just there to document the game. We're not there to be cheerleaders or fans. It's interesting. I a lot of times when I'm getting ready to go shoot a game, I pay attention what color I'm wearing so that I'm not wearing one of the team's colors because I don't want to be people to think that, oh, he must be here shooting for that team. I'm not shooting for any team. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm just here
Mhm.
to shoot the game and hope that it doesn't end up in a tie so I don't have to be here any longer than I have to be. That's my goal.
And does that make it? I mean, that having, especially when you're doing it with sports,
Mhm.
and having that, wanting to tell the good story as opposed to being a fan story. You know, I'm sure it makes it easier to actually look for what's the story and not what you want to
It actually
politically.
I believe it actually is easier. I think I have it a lot easier when I'm shooting for Associated Press is a really good example. I'm not shooting for the local paper that's mostly interested in the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark. I'm shooting for Associated Press. Sure, they want the Caitlin Clark stuff. Everybody wants that right now. But they also need the visiting team because the visiting team, the town that they're from, the city that they're from, all their newspapers are depending on me to document their team. So if I do nothing but send them our home team photos, I've screwed them up because then they don't have any photos of their home team. So I have to provide as balanced of a report as I can for both of the squads. And after I've done that, then my next task is to make sure that I've gotten key moments in the game, the storytelling plays of the game. And they're not always the prettiest photos, but you need to have that in there. And then you supplement it with all the pretty photos. So, but I mean, but the keys are to keep it as, in my opinion, just to keep it as balanced as possible. So oftentimes, I enjoy. I this sounds flippant, but I enjoy shooting pictures of losers. And I don't mean losers, people that have lost a game.
Mhm.
And
That's a
I've
lot of
had
emotion there.
there is a lot of emotion there, and I've had a couple of parents when I'm shooting high school sports trying to get mad at me when I've taken pictures of the kid crying, a football player crying after they lost, their final game as a senior or something.
Mhm.
And I have to point out to him that I've run into some of these people when they've been adults that have remembered the photo that I took, and they love that photo because it was a time. It was, I'd cry too if I was them and I put that much effort into something and then just came up short. So sure, you're supposed to be emotional, and that's part of the game. As the sports, the ABC always used to say, the agony of defeat. I mean,
Hmm.
it's part of the game, and the players know that. So I mean, that the typically it hurts then, sure, but eventually you get over it. We're talking about sports so much, we should do this.
Go to the sports.
Wow,
Go to sports ones.
I only put 50 photos in this one. And I have thousands of those. So yeah, sports. I'm from Indiana, so you're going to see a lot of basketball and all this.
Yeah. Is there a particular sport that you like to photograph the most?
I think I enjoy basketball, and it's not just because I'm from Indiana or it's around us so prevalently here. Um, Basketball is one of those things that's structured enough. You have four quarters. It's contained in a smaller area that you can see the entire field of play from any vantage point, and you can see from one end to the other easily. You can shoot it from one end to the other. Football or soccer, it's hard to shoot the opposite end of the field from one end zone to the other. Sure, we can pull it off with our modern cameras now a lot better, but basketball is one of those you can try so many different vantage points and do so many different things. You can set up remote cameras, and there's just it seems like there's a lot more opportunities to try new and different things. I spend a lot of here the last probably 10 years or so. I've fallen into the routine where I spend the third quarter of a basketball game not sitting on the court. I go someplace else. And I shoot that. I get stuff like that because I went up and got off the court. I wouldn't have had a picture of LeBron James doing his first slam dunk after he came back from an injury. If I didn't go up there, I wouldn't have had that. What I think is a more dynamic photo than what would have been on the court.
Well, and it's also
Same as,
getting away from what would be the cliche photograph and something like that. If
and
you're
in this
shooting it
case,
from,
clean
yeah,
up background. I mean, my background is perfectly clear. You see nothing but the story, which is the picture. It
mhm.
eliminated all of the stuff. So I think that's why I like obscure. I say obscure. I like extreme angles. So I shoot a lot of stuff really, really low. I shoot a lot of stuff really, really high. But I still know that the majority of my stuff needs to be here in the center of gravity is what I've always thought of. So whenever I'm shooting sports, I think of their center of gravity. So I'm shooting a lot of basketball players from the level of their hips. It's just one of those things I kind of try to do. Somebody going over a high jump, well, they're up here, so I got to be up higher to shoot that. I completely contradicted everything I said with that photo. Um, but I think that trying different angles, vertical angles, are important, rather than just always sitting on the court on your butt. Your camera's 3 feet from the ground.
Mhm.
That's fine. I mean, that's fine on getting 90% of your photos, but I think if you were looking to create that stopping power, you need to do work to make the image a little bit better. So clean up the background, go to a different angle to create the stopping power. Because otherwise, your photos are just they all start looking the same after a while. And you're depending on the action to do the heavy lifting for you at that point. Sure, you've got to have the correct exposure, great color, um, get great, nice composition, but if you don't put an extra layer of icing on top of that, it's nothing special. It's just another photo at that point. So, and this is a good example. I mean, I depended on the action on that one to make that a good photo. The fact that they were up in the air and off the mat is kind of what made that photo. And similar with that, and there's nothing fabulous about that photo. I just happened to catch the moment when that coach was angry.
But then it's also the difference between just a regular shot and a moment, and like the
Right.
decisive moment.
Exactly. Um, when you can shoot 20 frames a second or 30 frames a second or whatever we're capable of doing now, um, it kind of sucks the fun out of it for me, to be honest. I I often will go down to 10 frames a second just because I don't want to edit a whole lot of stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm still capable capturing it with 10 frames when I don't need 20 frames. I mean, I just know that I can do it. So I would
And
like to I would like to have the confidence and the freedom without the pressure of having to perform and having to get the photos to shoot single frame. I would love to just be able to sometime just go out and shoot a game and only shoot a frame at a time and not motor drive stuff just to see if I still got it, if I can still pull it off, if I can still nail the timing of stuff. Because that's what's fun about the photography. I think shooting 20 frames a second sucks the fun out of it a lot. Sure you're gonna look like a rock star. You're gonna have the moment. You can't miss the moment with 20 frames a second.
mhm.
You can misedit the photo, you can pick the wrong frame, but I spent this last Colts season on the catwalk at Lucas Oil Stadium. I don't like heights. I'm afraid of heights. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, not as much as I used to be because I spent an entire football season on a catwalk over Lucas Oil Stadium.
Uh-huh.
That's really high up there too, by the way. It's really high up there. And I was shooting for the Colts. So the Colts full-time staffer hired me to work with them this season. So for the past season, it was this past year. So occasionally I am doing work for the teams themselves. I've done work for the Pacers and the Fever as well.
Mhm. Do
So
you, as a freelance photographer, do you ever get a chance to do like long form stories?
um I'll say no in that they don't come to me with a long-term story. Now I've pitched stories before that have taken, I wouldn't even call them long-term, to be honest, taken more than one visit or taken multiple stops of places. So I've done a few different stories that have been more than just a go get a picture of this situation. But those have become far and few between as a freelancer for me. Um, I'm trying to think if I even know anybody that's really done much work in that regard. That's what I've done in my past, where I followed a canine officer when I was in one of my first jobs out of college was at a newspaper in the county. Got their very first canine in the time I was there. So I shadowed them for 3 months or whatever, going through training. So I drove an hour multiple times a week to where they were training this dog and all of that. And I don't do that kind of work anymore. And I really do miss that a lot. Now, having said that, there's nothing to keep me from doing a project on my own,
Have you done
except,
any projects on your own?
oh,
Hmm.
you want to know why?
Why?
Because I'm lazy. It's not, um, and I should because it's what I love to do. I think it's a time thing. And anytime I'm planning on shooting something for myself in that regard that may or may not get published or sold where I can make a living, um, I I'm afraid it's going to get derailed by a phone call from somebody saying, "Hey, can you go shoot this for us?" And then I'm put in a position that I got to make a decision. It's like
Hmm. And you gotta go
got a
out
mor-
for what's gonna pay you before you.
I got a mortgage to pay, so it's
Uh-huh.
like it's an unfortunate excuse, and then because that's what it is, it's an excuse. There's really no reason for me not to go out and find my own stories. I pitch stories, and then usually when I pitch a story to specifically the Indianapolis Stars, my go-to for that kind of stuff, they'll give me the assignment. I don't know that they've ever undercut me, was the way I would phrase it probably.
Mhm.
they respect that, hey, it was his idea. He should shoot it,
And you've
which
been
is nice.
around long enough to at least get that level of respect as well.
Um, I'm I'm so lucky that um I'm treated so well by everybody I've ever worked for. I don't There's few people that or few companies or clients that I've worked for that, it was difficult. It was difficult to get paid. They were high maintenance after the shoot kind of thing. There's not very many of those that I have. It's always fun. In fact, I'm shooting a thing tomorrow. I've got to drive up to Fort Wayne. It's like a 2.5 hour drive tomorrow, for a company that I did something for a year ago. And they remembered me and liked what I did and liked working with me. I try to be fun because I'm not saving lives with what I do. We're not, few photographers are saving lives with their photos. Some are, sure. And, if you spin it right, but I try to enjoy what I'm doing. I have fun and I make things lighthearted, even if it's something's going off the rails for something. It's like, we'll figure it out.
Mhm.
We always figure it out. We always figure it out. It always happens. And it goes back and spinning back to sports. There's a lot of times that somebody will come and stand in front of me or whatever, and they'll apologize for getting in my way. It's like, don't worry about it. I don't care. I'll figure something out.
Mhm.
I don't care. Cheerleaders are the bane of photographers' existence on and basketball. High school cheerleaders, they tend to show up at the very last minute and then stand right in front of you when you've been there for 20 minutes on the spot thinking, oh, this is great. I'm not going to be here alone. So I've got to the point, I'll go up to the cheer coaches and say, hey, I'm Doug McSchooler. I'm shooting for blah, blah. Do you know where your girls are going to be standing? So I'm not in their way, because that's what it is. I would be in their way. It's
Mhm.
their event. It's not my event. It's their event. It's my job to get photos of their event, which means if they're standing there, I can't stand there.
Mhm.
So it's sad when I see um, photographers get upset about, I can't believe the cheerleaders are hogging up the whole baseline or whatever. It's like, sure, it's frustrating, but it's not our show.
Mhm.
we're just there to witness, document it. So I mean, if it's the school's best interest to make sure that we have a place to shoot, so we get good photos of their team and there's facility, but it's also not their first priority to keep photographers happy.
It's interesting because I told you before, again, those of you who are tuning into the YouTube channel, you're missing all the networking stuff that happens before this. We were talking about the movie The Paper.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's always something that's interesting to me in the quote, in one of the quotes from there. Not it's you know, we walk in their world.
Hmm.
You know, it's we walk in their world and we're discovering their world. It's not our world, it's their world. And that's what we're there to do, you know.
It's one of the more frustrating things. There's a lot of frustrating things. I'm a very frustrated photographer, apparently, it sounds like, because I say that I've been saying this a lot tonight. But one of the things that's interesting whenever I've been had the assignment to arrange an environmental portrait of somebody, and especially if it's in their office or something, and I'll call them up and they'll say, well, today's not a good day. I'm really busy and my office is a mess. And it's like, I don't think they realize that is perfect for me. I want your office to be a mess. I want you to be busy. Because if you take the time to clean your office and you've got time for me, that means I'm faced with trying to figure out a way to get you to do something without telling you to do something so I can get pictures of you doing something. Otherwise, you're standing there doing nothing. And I'd much prefer them to be busy. I'm going to be a fly on the wall. You won't even know I'm here. And that's what I need. That's the much better environmental portrait than them after they've cleaned their desk off. Much better.
Have you ever gone to an assignment where they've had everything set up for you?
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's, you know, I never not shoot a photo. I say never. I can't think of a time I don't shoot a photo. I'll shoot a photo, even if I know I'm not going to use it. And even if it's like they've got this idea and they want to do this, I'll do it. And then as they continue past what they've set up for me, and they start just naturally continuing doing something,
Mhm.
those are the photos then that I can start using. That it's like, okay, they're not thinking about me taking the photo anymore. They've gone back into what they're doing. And that's the art of photojournalism, I think, in that knowing how to have a conversation with somebody, make them comfortable, and make them kind of forget that you're there. And once somebody starts talking about not just themselves, but what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, and what you're there to be photographing them doing, they forget about having their picture taken. Especially if you're doing your job right and you're not getting in their face and you're not interrupting them. You're not getting in the way of the story. You're just letting them go with the flow, and you fit in there seamlessly and just try to stick with it. So that's the fun part. That's what's fun for me, at least, is to stick to the ethical line as best you can, and it makes you feel better. You sleep better at night knowing that. So
Well, I want to give a chance to we have one other person in our meeting today, and I want to see if anyone else wants to ask you any questions.
so quiet.
I know.
Well, if anybody did ever want to recount, I mean, I love to help young photographers, or even old photographers. And I'll be at an event. I was doing the NIT championships. They were in Indianapolis this past year, and I'd have time to kill because I'm a kind of guy I set up early, and I know I kind of already have some places staged down. And I know what I'm going to go. And if I see somebody setting up a remote, I'll help them set up their remote. If they want help setting up their
Mhm.
remote, I'll stand out there and hold a mop up for them so they can pre-focus or something on it. I like to help people out. And besides, it's an opportunity for me to learn something because, man, this world changes daily with our equipment now and the technology. It's not like it used to be. You had three different films to shoot. You could shoot them at different ASAs or ASOs as we call it now, and you'd process it differently. But it was a little bit more of a narrow path on what our capabilities were. Now it's like it's constantly changing. I mean, technology is just exploding, and trust me, I don't profess to know it all. So,
And
mm-hmm.
we're really most of the time photographers. There's a bit of um a camaraderie out there for each other. We're not necessarily there to beat each other. We're there to get a great photograph.
I love being in a photo room, and as I'm leaving, I always hope, especially if it's people that I know and guys I shoot around or women I shoot around a lot, I always hope that they got a great photo. I hope it's not better than mine, but boy, I hope they got a great photo. I want everybody to get strong photos. I don't like, I just think it's a whole lot better because I love to see what other people's stuff, and especially if they outshot me on an event or they got a play that I didn't get. It's like, man, I need to rethink what I'm doing next time so that I can, I'm position myself better. Now, having said that, there's no magic position in any sport. There's nowhere to put
Mhm.
yourself. People that try to chase the sidelines with the football, I think they're crazy. Personally, I hunker down, I sit on a spot, I start shooting the longer glass, shorter glass if they're getting closer to me because it creates a variety in your report at that point. Let the action come and go from you and don't chase it because then you're just chasing with the same lens and everything's going to start looking the same focal length and same distance. Head sizes are all going to be the same. That's crazy.
Well, if you're also chasing it, you're definitely going to miss the moment because you're too busy going and running up, and especially a football, soccer, soccer especially. Like if you're trying to go out and photograph soccer,
Yeah.
there's no way you're going to be able to follow that ball around.
Soccer's fun. I mean,
Mhm.
soccer's fun that in that regard. It's kind of like I've I've had a lot of jube shots from the opposite end of the field that if you crop it right and you're doing the best you can with your exposure and everything, you can get a fabulous photo. Not as tight, it's not, in your face as much, but it still looks cool and still you can still tell the story, even if it's not what would be the ideal shot necessarily. So,
Even if it's not right in front of you, you can still
right.
get that photograph.
One of the other things too, real quick, with not chasing, thinking of football, that's a great example right there. That's exactly what I was talking about. You get some great defender shots,
Mm-hmm.
and especially those inside linemen and stuff that are difficult to shoot if you're behind the ball. Otherwise, you miss those. Those guys never get photographed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're buried down in the bottom of the pile, and I enjoy trying to. A lot of times, I'll get a shot list of players I need to capture, who I need to shoot, and I think that sports editors throw those inside linemen in at us on purpose just to make us struggle.
Make us work for it. Make us work for the
Yeah,
photograph.
it's like every time I see a number, it's like 98. Dang on, that guy's in there, but that's behind the scenes there too. So I mean, it's just yeah, I don't believe there's a magical spot to be, and there's not a spot not to be necessarily either, unless it's in the way. Don't want to ever be in the way. So,
Okay, so um, we're
I
kind
wish
of
I would have
coming
done more photos in that pile. That would have been much nicer.
in.
I mean, I didn't throw very many photos. The one thing I shoot 90% of is sports, and I threw a very limited pile into this one. So,
That's okay. I think we can the last few things we can actually turn off the shared screen for a little bit, and we can you and I talk together for a little bit.
sure.
Um, so first of all, we're coming up towards the end. How can people get a hold of you? How can people find out more about you?
My name is incredibly Googleable. Um, so Doug McSchooler is like you Google that, and you probably won't see many photos of me, thankfully, but you'll see a lot of my photos. And then my website, just mcschooler.com, which is easy. And then within that website, you can easily message me, email me, call me. My Instagram is my thread of current work. So the thing I enjoy about that kind of stuff is you'll be able to see that there's a consistency to what I produce. I'm very consistent. You won't see many pockets of time that I'm not posting stuff. So you think, is he not shooting anything good, or is he not doing very well, or I think my Instagram it's a good testament to I can dependably produce pictures, which is fun. I mean, something to be proud of. Anybody that can do that, I think. So
Okay.
that's something I strive for at least. So
For those again watching this, remember you can go over to newridermedia.com and sign up for the newsletter and
that's
the
probably
free
the best way to get in touch with me is through newwriter.com. If you go to that website, watch this video,
uh-huh
and you'll remember my email address this way. That's what I recommend
absolutely.
people do.
Yeah, that's what I do. That like go to New Writer Media, and while you're there, sign up to be a member for National Storytellers Night.
I need
uh
to a website to direct people to yours so that they
I,
can get more information.
you know what I should do? One of the things I should start doing is doing like, in the old days of the internet, they used to do like these ring links where it's like you would have like a little like ad on the bottom that linked to somebody else, and that person will link back to
Oh,
you.
right.
And we should start doing that. Like
Right.
I think we should revisit the link rings.
Right. Yeah.
I could
That's
do that. Like maybe I'm gonna start. I think I'm gonna put that into my
Look
onto
at that.
my website. There, see, look at that.
An idea.
Come up with new ideas all the time. Before we go, I got my five final. I call them the five final questions. These
Oh,
are
okay. Speed
these are
run.
yeah. This is a speed round. Um, it's again as I say to everybody else. This is like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Behind the Actor Studio, but it's inspired by that. It's
Oh, okay.
but they're 5 questions instead of 10. So I
Yeah.
edited, talking about editing down.
Sure.
So the first one is, what saying, quote, thought that goes through your head to keep you motivated when you're on assignment?
Um, I'm not saving lives. I love what I do and I'm here to have fun. And I need to, when it gets stressful and you're worried about your camera functioning, something breaking down, take a big deep breath and just work through it. You'll get there. You always get, I always end up with a picture. I'll figure out a way to get a picture. May not be as smooth as I want, but I'll figure out a way to get a picture. So yeah, I'm not saving lives. That's my thing. So,
What is your favorite thing to see?
um, people having fun and winning and being successful with what they love doing. I enjoy people happy. So yeah, that's fun.
What do you like to hear?
Ugh. So much of my stuff sports. I like to hear a crowd go crazy. It's when an arena is deafening because the game is just that exciting that everybody is behind it. It's truly a different atmosphere. And so something about anytime you're at a sporting event and the whole place is just erupting, you know you're kind of watching something special happen, which is also the signal that if your camera is not up to your face, you're messing up because the crowd's responding to something. You should be shooting it. So if
You're
you're looking at the crowd and not don't have your camera to your face, you're messing up. You're missing it.
missing
So
it. What is your favorite word?
um probably amazing. Um, I think that a lot of the stuff that I get to witness in people's lives that I go into is amazing. I mean, I'm always it's just it is amazing to me how people are just so different. We're all the same in so many ways in our desires, but boy, the way we get there is so different, and that's amazing to me that somebody can find a different way to be happy. So that is probably my words amazing. So
If you could, okay. So if you believe in heaven, what does it look like to you?
a dark room. It's dark. No, no, I think it is just constantly seeing amazing things. I mean, I remember to this day the very first time I saw a picture, a print developing in a tray. I mean, it was amazing. It was like, so I mean, that's the feeling that I would like to have the rest of my life and even beyond, would be just that pure awe of anything is pretty cool.
I think the worst thing that came out of digital is that we no longer get to hang out in the dark room.
I'm telling
Like,
you,
there is always that thing that you have music playing, you have the larger in front of you, the chemicals behind you, even the smell of fixer, the smell of
yep,
developer. Like, there's
yep.
nothing like it. And the fact that we don't get to do that anymore, like, I miss it. Like, I miss the enlarger. I miss all that stuff.
There's something tactile about it that you don't get with digital. I mean, you just don't get, you don't have the elation of rewinding the film. And, there's
Uh-huh.
just something about it. You get to pop a card out of a camera. That's
hmm
not very exciting.
Uh, I miss the motor drive rewinding it. That you throw it
Yeah.
on this, bzzz, and
Well,
you're
and
like,
you would pull the film out of the camera and you would hold the film and you would think, I've got to protect this
uh-huh.
because so many things can happen to that
Mhm.
roll of film.
Yep.
This memory card here, there's not a whole lot that can happen to this thing. I mean,
Right.
sure, it can go through the washing machine, but I've had them go through the washing machine and they still work just grand.
Uh-huh.
You put a film through the washing machine, you may have problems.
You don't have the film anymore. You don't have it anymore.
So, I mean, there's something about it feels valuable having a roll
Mhm.
of film. It just feels like because there are very precious moments on there. There are a few precious moments, only 36 pictures on that roll that, man, if you mess something up, especially if you don't put it on your reel correctly. But when you're developing, if you're too
Mhm.
rushed or there's so many variables. You don't have as many variables on this. You screw it up, you just go back to the original.
Oh,
You're fine.
mhm.
Go back to the raw file. You got it.
I can't tell you how many times I remember when you get the wonky wire uh, reel that you're trying to like put the film into, and it makes everything stick together, and you go to develop it, and you pull it out, and it's like, uh,
My
that one part was probably where my photograph was at.
my freshman year in college, my
Mhm.
before classes started, I went to a meeting for the college yearbook, and I wanted because I was a photographer for crying out loud. And when I showed up, somehow they knew of me or my name or something. I honestly don't, because I had already gone to the newspaper and started kind of working at the town paper. It was I didn't even live there, and I was kind of doing stuff. So, and they wanted me to be their photo editor. It's like freshman for crying out loud. So I lied and said, "Oh yeah, I know how to load reels of film and stuff." Didn't. I got a reel. I went back to my dorm and sat there in the dark, endlessly rolling, unrolling, rolling, unrolling, rolling, unrolling, till I got to the point I could do it without stressing.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have no doubt I could still spin a reel probably 3 times and get it loaded in three, maybe
I,
four.
I used to love doing in the dark bag. You get the dark
Oh
bag
yeah,
and you put it
yeah.
all in there. I mean, and photo and in in my high school, I used we had a big dark room that we could do that in,
Mhm.
completely dark. But I won't before I go too much into
Was that
this.
fun?
I gotta close out the show. So, but those of you again, this is what goes on during our networking time. So please come to the next episode, which we got an episode or not episode, but next meeting, which is going to be in 2 weeks. It's always on Wednesday, every other Wednesday. You can check out newridermedia.com to find out when the next one is. And I strongly, strongly suggest that you sign up for the membership. Best thing is, it's free. For Doug McSchooler and myself, I want to thank you and say have a good night.
Check this out.